Gary, you're already several times in meetings. I assume we're good to go.
Okay, perfect. So
Yeah.
Lord Campbell,
And
up to you.
and is Andreas with us?
Yeah.
My director, Monsieur le Directeur.
He won't be on screen, but he is here with us in the background.
Right, because I'm expecting him to do a lot of. Maybe the next session he will do more. Okay,
Exactly.
are we ready? I'll go on the count of three. If that's all right.
That's fine. We can start.
Okay, right. 3, 2, 1. Good afternoon, colleagues, and welcome to the 66th annual and the first online session of the NATO Parliamentary Assembly, and more specifically to the joint meeting of the Political and the Civil Dimension of Security Committees. I trust you're all in good health and in good spirit, despite the ongoing pandemic. I'd also like to extend a particularly warm welcome to my friend, colleague and co-chair, Joël Mélam, who from France, as you might guess, who is the chairperson of the Civil Dimension of Security Committee. She will be taking over the chairmanship of this meeting following the presentation of our most distinguished guest speaker, the Minister of Foreign Affairs of the Hellenic Republic. Before we proceed, perhaps I should remind colleagues, if they're not aware of it, that if you wish to make a comment or a question, you should click on the request the floor button on your device. And please, if you can, ensure that you've got a good quality headset and with a quality microphone. If you intend to speaking today, our interpreters can have great difficulty when speakers have got poor equipment. Finally, this meeting will be audio and video recorded, and it will be broadcast live via web streaming and shared on social media platforms for promotional purposes. The recordings will be available on the NATO PA YouTube and Facebook channels after the meeting. So very extensive, you might even say worldwide coverage. As you all know, the session would have taken place in Athens this year. And I would like to call upon the leader of the Greek delegation, who would like to say a word or two in advance of my more formal introduction of our most distinguished contributor, Nikos Dendias. Madame, leader of the Greek delegation?
Yes.
There you are. There you are, Marietta.
Madame la Présidente, Monsieur le Président, chers collègues, c'est avec...
Chairman, Chairwoman, dear colleagues, I would like to introduce you to the Minister of Foreign Affairs of the Hellenic Republic, one of my closest friends, Mr. Nikos Dendias. But before giving him the floor, I would like to say a few words, if I may. I am convinced that our members will be particularly interested in understanding the priorities of the Hellenic Republic when it comes to foreign affairs, your perspective on the developments in the Eastern Mediterranean region and the measures that should be implemented to reduce tensions. In my view, given the difficult times that we are coming across with multifaceted challenges, I think that it is essential that we continue dialogue and that we can strive to find common interest and agreements. Without further ado, Minister, I'll give you the floor.
I might just say a word or two, since I obviously don't know the Minister as well as you do, and others of our colleagues may not be aware of his distinguished political career. According to my information, he's served in the Greek Parliament since 2004, held several ministerial positions, including that of Minister for National Defence. He served as the Foreign Minister of Greece since July 2019, and of perhaps more particular interest to a British lawyer. I know that he is a lawyer by training and that holds master's degrees from University College London and the London School of Economics. We may be about to claim you as one of our own, Minister. It's a great privilege to have you with us today, and we look forward to hearing from you about the Greek perspective on the alliance's necessary adaptation to a changing strategic environment, after which you have been good enough to indicate that you will be willing to answer questions. The floor is yours, sir.
Thank you so much, Lord Campbell. And I have to also thank Marietta Giannakou, who, as she said, a very good friend of mine. May I say that I'm very pleased to participate today at the proceedings of the 66th plenary session of the NATO Parliamentary Assembly. I would have, of course, preferred to welcome you all here in person. Yet, I'm particularly glad that we can find ways to engage in substantial dialogue despite the unprecedented health crisis we all face. Let me begin by thanking the President and, of course, all the members of the Parliamentary Assembly for your hard and important work. Being myself a parliamentarian, I know that NATO relies on you to engage with your colleagues, but even more importantly, with the people you directly represent, in order to explain what NATO is and what NATO does. NATO's role in confronting challenges at our eastern and southern flanks and at countering evolving threats is of paramount importance. I know that we can count on you, parliamentarians, to carry the message that NATO is not just a political military alliance. It is also an organization based on shared core values. These values, enshrined in the United Nations Charter and on international law, are integral to our common vision and purpose, and as such, we have always sought to promote and defend them. On specific issues of the Alliance agenda, Greece, as you know, has warmly welcomed the NATO 2030 reflection process, which will hopefully produce constructive proposals to maintain NATO's unity and NATO's political role. NATO today needs to strike a balance between, on the one hand, the necessity to respond to increasing global challenges, and on the other hand, the danger of becoming overstretched and therefore inefficient. It is also important to ensure NATO's technological edge, which is being increasingly challenged by both state and non-state actors. Furthermore, we need to preserve and sustain our defense spending. As you know, Greece, despite extremely tight budgetary constraints, maintains its defense expenditure above the 2% threshold. We're also working on meeting the 20% target on investment for major military equipment and research and development. In this regard, I'm sure that you're informed about the recent decisions by the Greek government concerning the upgrade of our military equipment. At the same time, of course, we participate substantially in NATO's operations and missions. As technology and innovation open up new avenues of aggression, only concerted responses can give solutions to security problems, including in the field of arms control, disarmament, and non-proliferation. Unfortunately, with the INF treaty debt, the longevity of the New START in doubt, and the possible unraveling of other elements of international arms control regime, there are plenty of grounds for concern. In this context, we believe it is necessary to keep engaging in a dual-track approach of collective defense and meaningful dialogue with Russia. At the same time, we should work on bringing China into the international arms control efforts. After all, China's increasing international role in military terms is having implications for NATO's interests. In parallel, the adaptation of our deterrence and defense posture must remain a constant endeavor. Actually, it should address challenges in the South and be flexible enough to encompass means to tackle new sources of instability, such as the irregular migrant flows. In this context, NATO's activity in the Aegean provides a sustained deterrent presence. We're looking forward not only to its continuation, but also to increased allies' contributions. This, as a matter of fact, would be a long overdue minimum signal of solidarity to my country. In an interdependent world, as was clearly demonstrated by the COVID-19 pandemic, we should reinvest in multilateralism and multilateral institutions. NATO should further nurture its cooperation with other international organizations, and in particular with the European Union, because the security of NATO and the European Union are interconnected. Together, the two organizations mobilize a broad range of tools and can make the most efficient use of resources to enhance the security of our citizens. The joint declarations of 2016 and 2018 in the adoption and implementation of 74 common actions were important steps, as well as political signals demonstrating that the commitment to strengthen cooperation is high. The two declarations gave impetus to the NATO-European Union cooperation because they embraced the key guiding principles: openness, transparency, inclusiveness, and reciprocity. And all this in full respect of the decision-making autonomy of both organizations and without prejudice to the specific character of the security and defense policy of any of the member states. Moreover, we need to formulate a more pragmatic framework of interaction with all our partners in order to deal with the evolving international security environment. Particularly within NATO's southern flank, the crisis in Syria and Libya and the ensuing migratory flows increase instability and make our cooperation with partners like Israel and Egypt essential. Furthermore, we need to keep the partnership open and adaptable, including in relation to countries that do not fit into any existing partnership format. Thus, we should boost our cooperation with India, whose contribution should be essential in addressing security challenges in Asia. The same applies for the United Arab Emirates and in the Gulf area. Greece, being the closest NATO ally and European Union member state to the Eastern Mediterranean and North Africa, pursues responsible policies that promote peace, security, and development. Greece understands its role not only as a forward outpost and a frontline state, but also as a pillar of stability, democracy, and regional cooperation. In this complex security environment, we have, at the very minimum, an obligation to lead by example. On this context, Greece has concluded two delimitation agreements and also agreed with Albania to refer our differences on the sea delimitations to the Hague International Court of Justice. We should not tolerate among ourselves practices that undermine our core values, compromise our unity, and subsequently damage our effectiveness in addressing the pressing challenges of our times. Yet, we continue to witness unilateral actions and initiatives undertaken also by allies in direct violation of international law and of the fundamental principles we ascribe to. Such actions, directed in some cases against other allies, constitute an affront to NATO's integrity and cohesion. These actions also constitute a threat to regional stability and transatlantic interests. They should be isolated and they should be condemned. Support for an assertive and effective alliance of sovereign nation states depends ultimately on whether NATO will, on the one hand, maintain its core values, homogeneity and solidarity, and on the other hand, be able to effectively address pressing old and new challenges. At this critical juncture, we acknowledge again that this is not an era to sit idle. New strategies to cope with the unprecedented security challenges are needed. Greece is determined to remain at the forefront of efforts aiming to bring those challenges about. My country remains committed to the values and principles within which Europe and its transatlantic allies hold in common. We will continue to place our national forces, capabilities, and structures at NATO disposal in order to help achieve the alliance's objectives in the years ahead. Thank you so much.
Thank you very much for this excellent presentation. Can you hear me? Can you hear me? Yes. I apologize, but I'm going to speak in French.
Your kind words.
Je crois que bien sûr la voix et la parole.
Of course, sound is the most important. I was thanking you, Minister, for your excellent presentation, because we now have the vision of Greece in this very difficult time with the pandemic and all of the issues and all the tensions that we can see on the international stage. I'm going to open the debate, but before giving the floor to the first speakers, I would like to ask you a question on the way you work with regards to this pandemic with your European colleagues. If you can see some things that should be improved, for example, in terms of procedures in the WHO, and of course, you talked to us about partnerships, and I would like to have more information about partnerships. Thank you, Minister.
We group questions, or do we answer on a one-to-one basis?
Sorry, I think
C'est comme vous le souhaitez.
It's as you wish, Minister. I can see that there's a question from our Turkish colleague. So I'll give him the floor so that he can also ask his question.
Oh, thank you.
Thank you, Madam Chairman. Mr. Minister, with all due respect and neighborly sympathy, I wish you and Mevlüt Bey Çavuşoğlu can find a ground to move forward in solving Turkish-Greek disputes. I am a diplomat by profession. I know the issues very well. But yesterday, when I asked Minister of Energy after the speech addressed by your Prime Minister, Mitsotakis, about resumption of the talks, you know, during the exploratory talks, there was no such tension between the two countries. But unfortunately, it was stopped at that time, a few years ago, by Greece without any explanation. When I asked about the resumption of the negotiations, both Prime Minister and Minister of Energy picked up just two issues, continental shelf and exclusive economic zone, as the issues to be discussed. But we all know there are others. There are a set of disputes in the Aegean, in the Eastern Mediterranean, including territorial waters, status of the islands, demilitarized zone, something like this. So, and as far as I know from profession, during the exploratory talks, a lot of exercise was made, exploratory exercise on these issues also. Why does Greek now limit the issues to be discussed now to just to the issues? As you know, President Erdogan called for resumption of the talks without any precondition. By asking this, I wish really a solution of these problems as soon as possible. Thank you very much.
Merci.
Thank you very much, dear colleague. Minister, I can see that for now we don't have other requests for the floor yet. As you know, it's always very difficult at the beginning of the first session. Questions are asked very late during the meeting. So I would like to ask you another question about the relationship between Greece and China. After China invested in Greek infrastructure, namely the Korean port. And I give you the floor back, Minister. This is the first question.
Well, as everybody knows, the European Union is not just an economic organization. It is not just a common market. It's a family of countries. It's a unique historical experiment which have brought peace, stability, prosperity into the old continent where for years There was war upon war. Millions of lives have been lost. Now, how do we work in the European Union? We try to create common areas of understanding, common rules, and we try to implement those rules in all the areas of the Union. That is the main way in which we try to address the issues of the pandemic. Of course, in this case, there's another factor which we have to take into account. This is the epidemiologic evidence, the epidemiologic data. So what we're trying to do is to organize a set of rules which apply to all the countries depending on just on the epidemiological data and nothing else. So we try to group epidemiological data. But of course, the main aspiration is to go beyond the COVID-19 crisis, to overcome this huge crisis. And to do that, there's one great opportunity, but also one great duty. And that has to do with the distribution of the vaccine. But having said that, which is an obligation of the Union and of the member states towards the citizens, I have to say that the European Union, as a unique experiment in the history of the world, has also an obligation to the neighbor states beyond the European Union on the issue of the vaccine. The vaccine health is not the right of the rich, is not the right of the affluent, it's not just the right of the Europeans, it's the rights of humanity. So what the European Union will try to do is be able to address this challenge as much as possible, first of all, within its boundaries, but let me be clear, and beyond that. That is the way we try to see it. I was very much intrigued, and I would like to thank our Turkish colleague for his question. I have to say that, as everybody knows, I've never kept it as a secret, Mevlut Çavuşoğlu has been a long-time friend of mine. And I'm looking forward to in Mevlut's giving me a date on starting our exploratory talks again. But Greece has clearly set a precondition, which is not in the essence a preconditions in the sense of the word, but is something so much logical that I think any sovereign country would ask. And that is, we ask Turkey to stop the illegal research that is doing on the continental shelf in the Southeast Mediterranean, on the Greek continental shelf in the Southeast Mediterranean. If Turkey believes that it has legitimate rights on those areas, then we can discuss it. And if we cannot agree, then the road is clear. We can go to the International Court in The Hague and resolve the issue. This is something that, for example, we have agreed to do with Albania, another country with which we were not able through negotiations to resolve our differences. Whether in two other cases, with Italy and with Egypt, we were able to resolve our differences through negotiations and sign the relevant treaties. So for all civilized countries, there are two ways to go. Either agree, or if not disagree, go to international justice and resolve the differences according to international law. But again, I have to say that our agreement, our understanding with Turkey is that this can only happen if Turkey ceases illegal activity. And having said that, I have to give you another clear understanding that we have, which has been always the case. On the exploratory talks that stopped in 2016 because Turkey did not continue the exploratory talks. It's Turkey's time to give us a date. Now it was Turkey's time to give a date then, which it didn't do, March 2016. Now, we cannot discuss whatever the other side thinks is a bilateral differences. For example, if I demand to own your house, I cannot oblige you to come and discuss the ownership of your property or of your house just because I say it's mine. So the clear understanding of the exploratory talks was that we discuss the issue of delimiting sea zones, and especially exclusive economic zone and continental shelf. And I think the best for both countries, for Greece and Turkey, is to take it over again from when we left it in 2016, but of course, under the clear understanding that first Turkey will stop the illegal activity in the Southeast Mediterranean. On Greece and China, I've been asked that question many times, and thank you for giving me this opportunity to answer it again. I understand that the port of Piraeus is a very important port on the Mediterranean, but let me be frank again. The fact that now China has an exclusive right in a very big part of the port of Piraeus is not Greece's choice. Greece privatized the Piraeus port in two different periods. In the first period, in around 2007 to 2008, if I remember well, Greece privatized just a small part of the Piraeus port. And the Chinese were the only party interested, they got it. But again, that was not really the determining factor because it was a very small part of the port. But then crisis came. Between 2010 and 2008 and 2018, Greece was in deep crisis. During those times, Greece was obliged by the Troika, by our European partners, to privatize certain state assets. One of the assets was the remaining Piraeus port. And again, the only party that appeared and was interested was China. At that time, we gave clear information to all interested parties that if China would be the only party, he would take the whole of the Piraeus port. And I have to say, no European or American or any other company was interested in this big part of one of the biggest ports in the Mediterranean. And because I have been asked time and time again by Secretary Pompeo, who is responsible, I have to tell, I told him clearly, and I'm telling you, it was not Greece's choice. This was imposed upon us. And just one last detail. I had the opportunity to meet many times Minister, now President of Bundestag, Schäuble in Berlin. Last time I met him, I reminded him of this auction on which we have gave early warning to the German side. And he was gracious enough to tell me, you're right, it is our fault, and please tell to the Americans exactly this. It is our fault, not your fault. So the fact that the Chinese have the whole of the Piraeus port was done in part because of Greece's choice, but that had to do with a small part of the port, and in part with the fact that no European or American company or other company was interested, but that was obligatory and was not our fault. Thank you so much.
Merci beaucoup pour ces réponses, Monsieur le Ministre. Nous avons 3 autres intervenants. Donc, dans l'ordre.
Thank you very much for these answers. We have 3 speakers now. First of all, Françoise Dumas, my compatriot, and then another colleague, and a colleague from Azerbaijan will be the 3rd speaker. So I will start by giving the floor to Françoise Dumas from France. We will be celebrating soon an anniversary of the independence of Greece, and your country has many lessons to share with us as regards the changes in the strategic environment in our alliance. This, of course, can be useful lessons to learn. Your country is a committed actor in the Euro-Atlantic region. And if we look at burden sharing statistics, this is clear. You are focusing not just on capabilities, but also on operational capabilities. I listened quite attentively to your presentation and to what was stated by your Prime Minister yesterday. I share Greece's view as to the important role that can be played by Europe to ensure defense in the Euro-Atlantic area. We will respect all our partners and allies if we all ensure that the burden is shared properly. and we all have a fundamental role to play as regards the southern flank, where we have our links with Africa, with the Middle East, with this entire region. This is not a recent concern, but it is more and more prominent with the changes that have led to a number of difficulties and problems, and in particular because of a radical Islam, which is exploiting despair in economic, political, social terms. You are directly impacted through the migration flows, but I see that there are a number of converging views. Last week, I went to Sahel with with the Defense Committee of the National Assembly, and I would like to welcome the achievements of our forces in the field to ensure our collective security. What additional mechanisms between NATO and EU should we activate in order to better protect the Mediterranean and the southern flank in its nearest region or further afield? Also, as regards the Balkans, with now North Macedonia as a new NATO member, you need to be congratulated for your courage and your long-term vision that your country was able to demonstrate. So I would like to know, what is your assessment of the developments of the last few months in Bosnia-Herzegovina and in Kosovo, where we still have international forces deployed to ensure peace? And my last question is on the new Silk Road, where we cannot deny the impact in economic terms. So I think your country is well placed to tell us about opportunities, but also challenges of the Belt and Road Initiative. So I would like to hear your analysis on all these points. Thank you.
Madame Gaillaume-Mesdames, on ne vous entend pas. Il faut...
Pardon. Monsieur le ministre, je disais que vous avez plusieurs questions.
So, Minister, you have heard a number of questions already in this first intervention. Would you like to answer straight away, or would you like to hear other speakers first?
Yes, Madam Chair, I'm at your disposal.
C'est comme vous le souhaitez. Bon, alors à ce moment-là, nous allons peut-être...
The last one was a very long question with many sub-questions, let's say. It was almost the whole of our foreign policy in the region. So, but I will try to keep my answer in a summarized way. Well, we have a blessing in Greece, but also we have a curse. Both are expressed in our geographical position. And as things stand right now, we are in the middle of multiple crises in our whole region. You name it, it's here. It's Syria, it's Lebanon, it's Libya. Wherever we look, it's the Caucasus. Wherever we look, there are challenges. So it is important, it is very important, first of all, for addressing those challenges, to have a very clear line of communication between the European Union and NATO. It is absolutely essential that both these different in their essence and organizations see a reality under the same angle, because many core values of both NATO and the European Union are the same. And I have to say, in order to achieve that, more contacts are necessary, more contacts between NATO and the European Union. I consider this of absolute essence to happen the soonest. On the southeastern Mediterranean, I have to say, we have been quite late to appreciate the challenges. For example, Libya. The dictatorship of Colonel Gaddafi was taken off the map, but we allowed Libya to become what is essentially a failed state. And I had to say, we were also very shy in Syria. We not involved ourselves in Syria in a way that would allow us to create a better future for the Syrian people. And Syria, again, right now, is a failed state. We faced a huge tragedy in Lebanon, and we're running the danger of Lebanon, which, when I was a kid, I remember Lebanon and Beirut being described as the Switzerland of the Middle East. And now Lebanon is almost a failed state. I have been to Lebanon in the last few months. It's the tragedy of those people there is unspeakable. So we have to address challenges early. One occasion in which we can lead by example again is the Western Balkans, which you were kind enough to mention in your question. Greece adamantly believes that the Western Balkans should become a member of the European Union. And the European Union should not allow a black hole within Europe, because it's clear that the Western Balkans is a part of Europe. And I refer to states like Albania, like North Macedonia. As you know, we have not yet recognized Kosovo. Greece has not yet recognized Kosovo, but we understand that, again, the stability of Kosovo is absolutely essential, and also the stability of Bosnia and Herzegovina is absolutely essential. And I have to say, we have to speak openly about the need of those countries to become, upon merit, of course, members of the European Union. NATO, in this area, has done a lot having to do with its mission. The European Union should do more on that. And finally, on the Silk Road, on the Belt and Road Initiative. Well, we believe that China should and be incorporated in the global system. That is something that is essential. China is a big producer and China is a big market. But of course, that has to be done under terms of equal opportunities for all, also for European companies, for American companies, for Western companies to be able to operate in China in the same way that Chinese companies and Chinese investment are treated in the West. So discussions are needed in order to create a playing field. That is of absolute essence. So if you ask me which way I see the Silk Road, I see it as it was originally in the past, a two-way road, not just a one-way road, a two-way road, from China to the West, but also from the West to China. So thank you so much.
Merci, Monsieur le Ministre. Je passe donc la parole aux deux intervenants suivants.
Thank you, Minister. And I'm now giving the floor to Ahmet Kankar from Turkey, and then to our colleague from Azerbaijan. So first of all, Ahmet Kankar, you have the floor.
Thank you, Madam Melam, and greetings from Ankara to Foreign Minister Dendias. It's good to have this kind of exchanges, and I believe we will be able to come to a certain good position in dealing with our issues as two NATO member countries and neighbors. So I just would like to mention that the actions, especially in the drilling and seismic activities, first was started by the Greeks, Cypriots in the Mediterranean. And as the foreign minister knows, Turkey has waited for a long time to address this issue together with Turkish Cypriots and Greek Cypriots together to find a common ground and solution so that this issue would not escalate in the Mediterranean. So to be just fair, I think that we need to mention this issue. So I just wanted to note this to the minister. And one other note for the colleague Dumas has mentioned, the radical Islam, this kind of concepts, the radicalism, mentioned with the name of a divine religion of Islam, is not very appropriate, because Islam is the religion of almost 2 billion citizens of the world. And we would like to be very sensitive in not calling this kind of radical concepts together with Islam, because this is a religion who's promoting peace and well-being of all the humanity. So I believe we can use words like extremism, violent extremism, but it's better not to associate a divine religion with this kind of negative connotations. I just wanted to make sure about that. Thank you very much.
Merci, Ahmet. Alors, je vois par contre que notre collègue...
Thank you, Ahmet. Now, I do not see our colleague from Azerbaijan on the screen, so I don't know if he is online. He doesn't appear to be online. Perhaps he has a connection problem. We'll see whether he comes back. So in that case, I would like myself to ask you another question as regards Greece's position on Taiwan, since we've already mentioned China, and personally, I share your views on China, but as you know, Taiwan would like to reintegrate the World Health Organization, at least with an observer status. And I think this would be very useful insofar as Taiwan has had an exemplary behavior in dealing with COVID. So this is not a trick question, Minister. I would just really like to have your position, perhaps on a personal basis, on this. Thank you. So I don't know whether our colleague from Azerbaijan is connected once again or not. No, but we have Lord Campbell who would like to take the floor. Excellent. Lord Campbell, you have the floor.
Thank you. Forgive me usurping my position, Minister, but it's too good an opportunity to miss. There are what once would have seemed remarkable developments in the Middle East, with recognition, both Bahrain and the United Arab Republic. And I just wondered whether you thought that, although it's the Gulf, nonetheless, it has influence on the Eastern Mediterranean, whether you think that there's any particular significance that we should attach to these changes in the Middle East and the possible changes that might be made in relation, in the long term, to the relationship between Israel and the countries of the Arab League.
Merci, Lord Campbell. Monsieur le Ministre, la parole.
Thank you, Lord Campbell. Minister, I give you the floor.
Again, thank you so much for those very interesting questions. I will first address the question very politely asked by our Turkish colleague. Well, we have to agree on the facts, because if we would like to go forward, at least we have to have the record straight. Now, as far as the activity of Cyprus is concerned, because if I understood well the question of our colleague, the presentation of Cyprus as responsible for all illegalities in the Southeast Mediterranean is not accurate at all. The Republic of Cyprus is conducting legal research work. It's not conducting anymore because that has been finished. But it did conduct legal researches in delimited sea zones by the Republic of Cyprus and other countries. According to international law, delimitation is concluded by agreements between sovereign states. And Cyprus, regardless of if Turkey recognizes Cyprus or does not recognize Cyprus, Cyprus is a sovereign state. And Turkey, which does not recognize Cyprus, is the minority of one. So Cyprus has never conducted illegal activities in its sea zones. First, it delimited with legal agreements, and then it did research work. Now, what Turkey is doing now is doing illegal research work in no delimited areas in the Southeast Mediterranean, or even worse, it does research work in delimited areas legally by the Republic of Cyprus. And this is not the way to go forward. And these issues can be addressed through discussion, can be addressed through negotiation, and can be addressed, if we cannot arrive to a conclusion, through the International Court in The Hague based on the international law. That is the way forward for civilized countries, for countries in the 21st century. And as Greece gave the example, in the last 12 months, we have concluded an agreement with Italy, we have concluded an agreement with Egypt, we have concluded with Albania how we're going to resolve our differences. We're the only country we're not able to find rules even of engaging in how we would resolve those differences is Turkey. So Turkey again is the minority of one. And as refers to radical Islam, I have to say that I'm not implying, of course, that everybody that believes to Islam is a radical. And I have to say that if I have my figures right, Islam is less than 2 billion, but that's not the important thing. But of course, there is a radical element in Islam. And I have to say that following the attacks in Vienna and following the attacks in Paris and in Nice in France, the last thing we can say is that radical Islam does not exist. And really, I cannot see how Turkey, which is Atatürk's country, a clear cosmopolitan state in its DNA, could in any way conceive that has anything or should have anything to do with radical Islam. Being an Islamist country does not mean that you have to be a radical in Islam, not at all. On the issue of Taiwan, as you know, Greece recognizes the Republic of China. That is that. We have no diplomatic relations with Taiwan anymore. Lord Campbell asked a very, very interesting question. I have to say, I just came back from Abu Dhabi yesterday. And I was there with my Prime Minister Mitsotakis. I have to say, we signed a series of agreements with the United Arab Emirates. And we did that, including, by the way, a defense agreement and a foreign relations agreement. Why do we do that? Because we believe now that there is an understanding around the region which goes beyond the East Mediterranean on how challenges in this region can be addressed. You know, in the past, there was a dividing line, Israel versus the Arabs. This dividing line does not exist anymore, rather the opposite, as Lord Campbell very rightly said. Now there are specific Arab countries that are very well connected with Israel. First it was Egypt, Jordan, but now also Bahrain, United Arab Emirates, in the future, Saudi Arabia. We're having different dividing lines. And the dividing lines now is between the countries that believe to peace, prosperity, stability, human rights, and the rule of law, and on the other hand, countries that challenge those assumptions on various grounds. So we believe that both NATO, but us as Greece, and peace and stability in Southeast Mediterranean has a lot to gain by the Gulf countries coming to the Mediterranean and use the Mediterranean as it was used in the ancient times. That means a way of communication, a way of peace, a way of stability, a way of prosperity. And of course, that includes Israel, but that also includes all countries that wish to participate in that project. And I would like to mention Turkey as a potential country that maybe would like in the future to be involved in such a process. And Cyprus is also a member of this process. So it is, of course, on a voluntary basis, but Southeastern Mediterranean is not just the current geographical space. It includes countries of the Gulf and also all countries of the overall region that would be interested in participating in peace and stability in this overall region.
Merci beaucoup.
Thank you very much, Minister. I can see that colleague from Azerbaijan is now connected, so I'm going to give him the floor. Dear colleague, you have the floor.
Il est pourtant bien inscrit. Est-il là?
Are you there?
Le voilà. Welcome.
Un problème technique. On va essayer de résoudre ce problème.
We seem to have a technical problem. Since we have a technical problem, Minister, if you don't mind, I would like to ask you a question about what Greece thinks about migration and issues related to illegal migration. I know that your country is in the front line with regard to this issue, so maybe you could tell us a little about that while we wait for our Azeri colleague to come back.
Illegal migration and irregular migration is a huge challenge for Europe, but it's essentially a huge challenge for Greece, which is it's a border state. Yes. And I have to say that sometimes we feel quite alone in our effort to address this challenge. And we feel quite alone because the truth is that all these people, all these, if I may say, unlucky people that come to the Greek shores or come to mainland Greece by passing Evros, the Evros River, that do not try to come to Greece. They try to come to Europe. So burden sharing for us is something that comes axiomatically from that very fact. Yet again, I have to say there was an improvement in the later years. But in order to be able to address this challenge, we have to accept certain principles. First of all, refugees. Goes without saying that refugees should be protected. This is a core value for Europe. Without protecting refugees, Europe will lose its soul and will lose its soul. So that is something that we cannot negotiate. Having said that, there's one issue that we have to understand, that we have to create a more efficient asylum process.
Yes.
The asylum process, as it is now, it has been conceived back in the years of the Cold War, when there were just a few tens of people asking for asylum per year. Now we're having hundreds of thousands of people asking for asylum per year. And most of them, let us be frank, are not refugees, are not entitled to the refugee status protection. So these people have to be returned to their countries of origin. But in order to do that, in a reasonable time, we need a more efficient process of deciding who is entitled to asylum and who is not entitled to asylum. And also, we have to be able to have an efficient return program. We have to return those people to their countries of origin with dignity, of course, with respect of the human rights, of course, but we have to understand that we cannot accept everybody in Europe. Even if we opened our borders, we had to close them again after some time because we cannot. It's a matter of numbers. We cannot. Having said that, in order to be able to address this challenge, NATO has a role to play. And NATO has already an operation in the Aegean Endeavour, if I remember well. This is an operation that is quite useful in order to address the challenges posed by illegal and irregular migration. And also, we need the cooperation of Turkey. Let us be frank. Without the cooperation of Turkey, again, the challenge becomes much more difficult to address. And I have to say that back in March and in February, we saw the opposite from the Turkish side. Exactly the opposite, the instrumentalization of migration as a weapon against the European Union and Greece. Thousands of people with a fake news campaign were made to believe that the border towards the European Union were open. And they pressed our borders in order to enter. And of course, we could not allow that to happen. We could not. We cannot allow 100 or 200,000 people to pass per day our border. That's inconceivable. So we need a close cooperation between European Union and NATO in order to address the challenges of migration. But again, having said that, it is something more that I need to add, that we have to deal with the issues that create migration at the countries of origin. Unless we're able to do that by offering development aid, by going there and making as much as we can the life of ordinary people better, the migration phenomenon will continue to exist. And that is something that we have to see clearly. And I have to say, it's much better, much easier, much more humane to address the issue of the countries of origin versus addressing this challenge at the borders of Europe. Thank you so much.
Merci beaucoup, Monsieur le Ministre. Alors,
Thank you very much, Minister. I'll try once again to give the floor to our Azeri colleague. Oh, sorry, I apologize. I can see that Lord Jopling would like to take the floor. But our Azeri colleague has disappeared once again. So, Lord Jopling, you have the floor.
Minister, you referred earlier in your most interesting presentation to the serious economic crisis which beset Greece years ago, and we were all at that time very concerned for you. Now, I know you're the foreign minister, but as Ming Campbell said, you're a graduate of the London School of Economics, so you must have a passing interest. I think it would be helpful and interesting if you could give us some sort of a snapshot as to what progress Greece is making to restore the strength of your economy. Thank you.
La parole est à vous, Monsieur.
Minister, you have the floor, and this is going to be the last question because I know that you have a very busy schedule. So thank you very much for giving us your time.
No, not at all. It was my honor, and thank you so much, Madam Chair. Again, my lord, this is a very interesting question, and thank you. I have to say, in LSE, I did theoretical criminology, so my background does not help me in understanding the financial situation of Greece, but at the same time, I served for a couple of months as Minister of Development, so that gives me an insight on the crisis and what we have done to overcome it. I have to say, the crisis during these 10 years between 2010 and 2009 and 2019 had to do with the two main factors. First of all, it was partly our fault. We spent, let us be frank and open, we spent more than we had, as many other countries. But also, there was a second problem, and the problem was the kind of medicine ascribed to us by the time by European friends and partners, because Europe was not familiar with crises. So it is like a practicing doctor that is learning on the patient without previous experience. So they tried to address the crisis with decisions that in many ways they were wrong. And instead of resolving the issues, they deepened the crisis. They deepened the crisis in a way that we lost almost 30% of our GDP, which is usually a result of a war. There was a time in 2012 that 50% of the people under 30 were unemployed in Greece. And the fact that the Greek society did not explode, that a revolution did not happen, had a lot to do with the Mediterranean kind of family and the support between the members of the family. If that was not the case, Greece would have collapsed. No Western modern society can address loss of 30% of our GDP within 2 years. It's unimaginable. The tragedy was unimaginable. Yet again, we were able to address the crisis. And I have to say, the resilience of the Greek society and the Greek state was proven. And also, were able to come out of the crisis with a much more efficient private sector and a much more efficient public sector. And also we have one additional advantage, which I have to say no other country has. were a post-populist country and a post-populist society. Because in 2015, a populist radical left party came into power in Greece. It remained into government. The name was Syriza. It remained into government for 4 years, even more than 4 years, almost 5 years, but yet again changed during that period. Because being in power during a crisis changes everybody. So Syriza changed. Syriza, for example, became a faithful member of the Western Alliance, the first radical left party that became a faithful member of the Western Alliance. So we are now a much wiser and much more efficient economy and society than we were before the crisis. Having said that, I wish to nobody to suffer what Greeks and Greek society has suffered through those 10 years, because believe me, these were horrible years for us. Again, thank you so much for the opportunity to address fellow parliamentarians. And having thank you, please allow me to say that I'm always at your disposal. And I hope that once I will have the opportunity to see you, meet you, and greet you in person. Thank you so much for your questions and the opportunity you gave me. Thank you.
Merci infiniment, Monsieur le Ministre, pour votre
Great appreciation to you, Minister. Thank you very much for having taken the time to be with us to answer all of these questions. We all know that you have a busy schedule. Thank you again from the bottom of our heart. We would have been so happy to come to Athens and meet you in person, but let's hope that this will only be a missed opportunity and that once this pandemic will be behind us, we'll have another opportunity. Thank you again very much, and all the best in the future. Greetings to Greece.
même à 18h30. Pour les membres de la Commission sur la dimension civile de la sécurité, notre réunion se poursuivra également à 18h30, mais merci de noter que vous devrez vous déplacer vers une autre salle virtuelle, vers une autre adresse, et vous auriez dû, normalement, je pense que vous avez reçu le lien nécessaire qui est à nouveau affiché dans la boîte de discussion qui est située à droite de votre écran, sous les messages. Donc, merci, bonne session à tous.
Thank you very much. I wish you an excellent next session. Thank you very much for your active participation, and see you very soon, especially for the members of the CDS committee. Thank you. Thanks again.